ornamental grasses, and I became really interested in making meadows or making, low evergreen panels. Nobody wanted me to make a big flammable landscape, and instead of everybody, throwing their arms around me and loving me and buying my plants like Kerr Blumell on the East Coast, people were going, this isn't going to escape like pampas grass, is it? I mean, everybody was already sort of looking at me, funny, and it was this thing where you had to really say, I mean, as a scientist, sometimes I like to think that I'm a scientist. I would go, gee, I really don't know. Nobody's ever done it, So a lot of these plants, these were their first times really on the West Coast and seeing what they do or didn't do, which is why in the last 5 years I started spending more time actually looking at native Western plants, Western grasses from Mexico, from Texas, from other areas that were similar to ours, and saying, well, there's 10,000 years of ecology on this one, like we know that this one works, that kind of thing. This is a native western sedge, Carex texensis. Sedges are members of the Cyperaceae family, same family as nutgrass. I'm still waiting to, that's my ultimate goal, is to sell nutgrass to somebody. I mean, it still tortures my professors at school that I sell stuff for a living that basically they taught me in weed lab. But these are sedges. Sedges are members of the Cyperaceae family. When you say the word grass, it can be, there's about 4 or 5, maybe even 6 different plant families that are, quote, sort of lumped into grass. The true grass family is Poaceae. So I've spent a lot of time looking at these sedges, and I'm looking at these for being lawns that don't need as much mowing or, don't need the same kind of maintenance as standard turf grass. And this is one of them here. This one's clumping, but it's mat forming. You can see the texture, and this is the height of it unmowed. The only problem is you can't buy it as sod just yet. So you got to plug it. What about the new trees? I showed you that little flatter one, Carex texensis. This is texensis here, this little finer textured one. So this one's a little bit coarser. In wet meadows in nature, it might be 12 to 18 inches, maybe more. We've maintained it sort of like you see here by mowing twice. Yeah, look at the rabbits here. Sort of gave up on the rabbits. We were poisoning them for a while, and finally I just said, I'm going to need stuff that the rabbits don't eat anyway. So I bring stuff here like I just did today, set it out, and if they eat it, then it has limited application. These are I'm making meadows and lawns out of these creeping sedges. This one has a nice dark green color. It's tough. Basically evergreen. So how I got away from the, where I started looking for plants in nature was not on the hot, dry slopes, but not actually down in the water with the cattails. Looking for the stuff that was on the edge. So like this, which basically in nature, where I collected this in nature, it was still in August, still basically green, although it was crispy on top. So the point is with maybe 4 irrigations per summer, you could basically keep this, quote, evergreen. Now, whether it's country club green or not is, maybe another story. But the point is if you made 50 acres of this, you would get your money back in reduced mowings after the first year. I mean, I keep talking to firms and going, don't you think your client would be, it's like, no, we just want to sell houses. We want to get into the houses as quick as we can. And it's like, well, but, who's going to have to pay that water bill and that fertilizer bill and the mowing bill, later on? I think this is just fine for median strips, for parks, for any of that.
Ruby grass?
Ruby grass, Rhicoletrum. This had incredible amethyst pink flower spikes that basically now have all disappeared. Clumping. It does sort of seed itself a little bit here and there. So I use it as an accent. I don't make large scale. But this is a new Pennisetum that I'm very excited about, Pennisetum spathulatum. Flowers basically finished. My holy grail meadow grasses I used to talk about my holy grail lawn, you know, lawn that was mowable, walkable, evergreen, low, drought tolerant, can grow from seed but doesn't seed itself, you know, doesn't become invasive. And I would want the same thing out of a meadow grass. I want it to have a showy flower, but when the flower's finished, I want the flower to shatter and clean itself. I don't want to have to go back and cut the old flower off. And that's what this guy does. Very excited about this one. Hasn't done any escape thing. We've done some 70,000, 50,000 unit plantings of them now down in San Diego County, our first sort of large scale meadow plantings of them. These were planted from plugs 24 inches on center, and so they probably could have really been more like, you know, yeah. And the trick is you know, getting your client to put up with the little tufts going in, and how long does it take to get some. This is buffalo grass. I've been growing buffalo grass now really since I moved here, and turf industry just does not want to get behind buffalo grass. Who wants a lawn that doesn't need to be watered, fertilized, or mowed? And most of the California turf grass industry, cartel, whatever, at UC Riverside and Davis. I know these guys. I'd say the same thing if they were standing right here. I mean, their whole life's work was in Bermuda grass. Turf grass came about as to whether, you know, you could whack a ball on it. You know, it has a lot to do with the golf course industry. And you know, there were two kinds of research going on, whether cows could eat it or whether you could whack a ball on it. And that's really what turf grass has been all about. And when I was a young buck just going to horticulture school, the improved tall fescues didn't even exist yet. Tall fescue was this big, rank, coarse grass that you saw out on bad athletic fields. They kept hybridizing it, getting the leaf narrower and narrower, looking more and more like bluegrass. And that's really the state of the art now, is of course our tall fescues, right? And that's a European species. This is a native southwestern prairie grass, native to the shortgrass prairies. Goes from Canada all the way down to Mexico, touches the Pacific and Mexico, but it doesn't get across the Mojave, again, to really be, quote, a California native. But it's a warm season grass. What's wrong with buffalo grass? You know, what's wrong with it? Well, what's wrong with it is it goes dormant. Nobody wants a grass that goes dormant. But look at I love the color of this. Buffalo grass downsides are, the biggest downside is that it looks an awful lot like Bermuda. And of course, Bermuda is the most serious weed pest of, you know, Western horticulture. So if Bermuda grass gets started in this, or if somebody plants a lawn of this and they don't, you know, do thorough, you know, weed control beforehand, then eventually, like every other turf grass lawn in California, this will revert to Bermuda grass. And so you sort of end up with a Bermuda grass panel. There's male and female buffalo grass plants. The plants come as boys and girls. And the turf industry was looking at girls. The female flowers are held down inside the foliage. The female flowers are held down inside so you don't see them. So the turf grass guys were looking at the female forms. When I saw male buffalo grass in test trials, I was like, hey, look at that. The male flower sticks up above and adds a little sparkle to the whole thing. We'll see some up here. But check this out. This is a female clone. This has never been mowed. Never been mowed. A couple sod growers tried to grow it. One guy down in the desert and some guy up in Sacramento, and it just has not caught on. I planted in my projects from plugs, where it spreads actually pretty quickly from just little dollar-sized units. And a lot of times I'll make buffalo grass walkways through other meadow plantings. But it's extremely heat tolerant, extremely drought tolerant. It's worked here by the coast. The problems I've had with the projects I put it in is if Bermuda gets started, then, you know, unless the help's really good, they can't tell the difference between the two. And most of the not so good buffalo grass I've seen, people keep having like stop, like don't fertilize it, don't water it, don't do anything to it. You're trying to treat it like regular turf grass, and I mean, it's dark. Doesn't reflect these in West Texas. This is a Mullenbergia emerslii. The flowers come out on this kind of a purple color like this, very open, and then they dry to this sort of spike that you see here. This is a great flowering accent grass. You know, this would work in Phoenix, Vegas. It's showy, full evergreen foliage basically to about here, flowers to here that you see through. My spec on this would be once a year to shear it to as close to the crown as you could get it. If not the first year, maybe not the first year, but then after the second year, like every at least once a year. The big chop. I try to talk to clients about that right off the bat. There's going to be a big chop. And you can maybe do it a little bit at a time or quadrant by quadrant. Supposedly our good friend Robert Irwin at the Getty is going to make art out of the Mullenbergia that we sold him for the area going down there. In Japan, they do projects like tie them up, you know, or something of that nature. I think you should have like the big corporate burn, but it's actually softer than Texas meadow sedge. It actually feels better on the bare tops than the wiry dark green native California carex. It does. We have some now that are a little more lawn-like. This is the main lawn in my front yard. Now I define a lawn as a grassy panel that by virtue of it being short enough or creeping enough, you can walk on it without twisting your ankle. So even though this is basically a clumping grass, it's mat forming, so you're not gonna turn your ankle on it. This is still not, quote, a traditional lawn, and basically the look that you're seeing now, it was looking really nice until we mowed it, because it was growing up. It had grown up and then folded over on itself. But after you do the cut, then you get this sort of look. And if we were to maintain this regularly as a lawn, if you mowed it more often, it would be more lawn-like in appearance. Because when you mow these grasses, it forces them to tiller. And I like this grass a lot for its golden color. I plant it in places where the late afternoon light sort of shows on it. To me, this is a perfect condo backyard. I mean, you can walk on it, the animals can play on it, and basically you'd maybe cut it twice a year, you know, twice a year. Evergreen, drought tolerant. There's no flower on it to really write home about, but it's also basically clean, you know, nice texture. This plant gets 4 to 5 feet high and is wide. So a mass planting would be plugged 6 foot on center. You know, this is Spartina bakeri, Florida cordgrass. This is Florida cordgrass, Spartina bakeri.
Pretty, isn't it?
Very subtle.
I really love. This is Florida gamma grass. This is actually one of the best evergreen grasses I have for deep shade. And you know, look at the difference between the two. I mean, and this has a prolific flower spike, so it sort of reads a little browner. But check out the flowers; they're really trippy. First relative is corn, so you get these red anthers. They'll be like single corn kernels stacked. But this is a nice, you know, you could group it with dietes.
This does
In
get
the
the shade,
shade,
you said?
evergreen. The flower's somewhat showy. You know, you don't call that showy. It's interesting, but it's not showy. But if I was to do a light chop here, like cut it in half, then it would come out with foliage after the flowers have been taken off. But I really like this one. Sun or shade. Here it is in full sun. In the shade, it's a darker green. So it's a good grass for the shade. And you know, grass-like is the other thing that we're really, you know, most all of these grass-like things I'm going to show you, the phormiums, the nolinas, and all this stuff, they're basically from grasslands, you know. Like that's something you would see is yuccas and grasses come together. When you really find good desert, it's grass, you know. And I just don't see it. I certainly don't see it in Phoenix. But these are Nolinas. These are in the lily family. And rabbits don't eat them. They get a white flower. They have really sharp edges. But we have Nolinas that'll grow from Oregon, Washington, all the way to Florida. There are a lot of native Nolinas, and nurseries are just now really starting to grow them, but great network with the grasses. Or here's something if the rabbit problem is just so nasty that you can't even deal with it. It's not very user-friendly. It's sharp edges, and so you wouldn't want to put it any place where it would. It's a great plant if you don't know it. Kalanchoe. It's one of the only fragrant succulents. You can make hedges out of it. It takes shade. I've trained it as a climber. I've taken it sort of like a vine, like trellises. And if you got a large-scale project, you can buy this from me. Just a cutting. Stick it right in the ground. Yeah. We've been trying to get. I've worked with Nancy Powers and a couple other designers that are aware of the fact that you can do it this way. You can really drop the cost of your mass plantings down by just using cuttings. And you do have to coordinate certain things, but that's why you see a lot of the succulents. This is a brand new grass I'm really excited about, Brachypodium. It's a species I got from Denver. It's in the brome family. That's the flower, nothing to write home about, but still a nice little dainty thing. Good dark green color, good in the shade. And actually the foliage, if you feel it, is hairy. So it does that thing that plants do when they have pilose foliage. They hold little water droplets in the dew or that sort of thing. More grass-like stuff. These are Gnaphophias. This is Gnaphophias zuluensis. I brought a lot of what I brought today are more bulbs, and we are in my own design work, and those are Phormiums. That's Phormium surfer right there. Here's Phormium dark delight, which I do. And revert. They all revert. They all eventually revert. Really? So they just do. Right. They'll revert back to a non-colored form, and unless somebody gets in there, pulls that reversion out, then it's eventually going to go into some other color. They don't like really hot. Monrovia Nursery picked these up in the 60s and couldn't figure out how to grow them in Arcadia. And I can't either. I don't grow them in Pomona. I mean, they basically just sulk all summer long, but then down here they crank. This is a new Phormium that actually came from the old Burkhart's nursery in Pasadena, a dwarf Phormium tenax variegata. Look at this. Oops, going back. This is Dark Delight. And behind it is a Phormium that I don't think is being used enough, is the species, the straight species, Phormium cookianum. There's Phormium tenax is the one species, which is big upright growth, and this is cookianum, which is basically foliage, 2 to 4 feet, much more prolific from a flowering standpoint. Those bloom red. Those are the seed heads. This is actually a patented buffalo grass, 609. What an attractive name.
This is a 609 buffalo grass.
609. Turfgrass guys are really something else. I don't know, call it buffalo grass, you're probably not going to sell it in Beverly Hills. But once again, 2 cuts a year basically maintains it like this.
Pretty good with traffic.
You can see it's a little greener. They make football fields out of it in
Nebraska.
This grass right here is called sweetgrass. When I'm making meadows, to grab some of this and crush it and smell it. This is a little perfume action. These are one of the original strewing herbs. This is actually, it's a warm season grower, so it's kind of going dormant now. But now where I'm really interested in is sort of, the art and science of actually mixing grasses together, So you add a little bit of this to the carex that we saw, so you get a little sweetener out of it. You poke in some bulbs and just let it, and maybe use some brachypodium for accent, sort of coming up through try to make it look like, you know, like God did it, sort of thing. So, you know, you can be as, you know, you can just be as formal layered like this, or you can start, you know, putting it together. I think that's the fun part is, you know, it really is something new in horticulture.